Greetings and welcome, everyone. Today is a very, very special show. It's called How to Use Real Estate to Achieve Your Life's Vision. And I have my good friend and business partner, Mr. Jack Gibson, on the line. Hello, Jack.
Hey, Shecky. And just one thing on this episode, we probably put the most time into prepping and planning this one out. I think it's going to be very valuable for our listeners.
Yeah, in fact, the subject is so vast that we are actually going to split this up into two different podcasts. So stay tuned, everybody. But basically, we're going to talk in this first part. We are going to talk about all the goal setting part and all the things you need to do to figure out exactly what your life's vision really is. And then as we get to part two, we will really do a deep dive in how you can leverage and use real estate to achieve everything you want to create the dream life that you want. Welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show, the podcast for heavy hitters. Two men, one mission. It's time to build your empire. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Jeff Schechter, aka Shecky, and I'm here with my business partner, Mr. Jack Gibson. And we want to welcome you to the High Return Real Estate Show. And we are just going to jump right into this part one. We are going to talk about achieving your life's vision. So I want to really put you in a state that's really important. Before we even get into this subject, it's important to really control your physical and psychological state. Jack, I know you and I are both pretty big fans of Tony Robbins, and he talks a lot about creating the right state. And there are some tricks and tips to do that. Is there anything that you do, Jack, in particular, to just get yourself in the right state?
Well, yeah, Shecky, great question. I mean, I think movement, if you really sum it all up, that's probably the number one thing that I do if I'm, really wanting to put myself in a much better mood is movement and getting outside. That seems to be the commonalities between, both of us. And for Tony Robbins, if you have never, for our listeners, if you've never had the chance to get to one of his seminars, I definitely recommend it. There's a reason why, we can go into a meeting 5 straight days from 10 a.m. until 10 or even midnight, and he can keep us engaged and keep us, not bored at all throughout the whole thing, right? I mean, those are long days. And his number one tool, I should say top 2 tools he uses, is high energy music and movement. And so he gets you out of your seat and gets you a little bit out of your comfort zone and really make sure that you're moving, because that energy that you then produce is going to put you into a state of where you're really, your mind is the most engaged and the most focused, and you're like in a positive place where you can really, really do some great thinking. So that's really what I do, Shecky. Yourself, I think it's right along the same lines.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of sunshine. I was just reading something very interesting that when you stand in the sun, you are getting all the benefits of every different band of the light spectrum that's possible. And we already know from science that there's a lot of different bands of light that are extremely therapeutic. I mean, they're using light therapy for pain and all kinds of stuff. So the sunlight obviously gives you full spectrum. Music, I'm a big music guy, and anything that's sort of upbeat, but movement is really key. So if you happen to be listening to this in your car, I want to encourage you to pause this right now, get out of your car, and do what we call a Chinese fire drill. Just get out and run around your car a couple times and then get back in. It's going to put you in the right state for the stuff that we're talking about right now. So today is all about goals, and it's really all about your inspiration. So part of the thing, if you're going to be able to move forward and create the kind of life that you want, you're going to have to be inspired, right? And otherwise, you're really never going to get out of your comfort zone. Human beings are creatures that will tend to stay in their comfort zone if there's no leverage to get them out of that. So either that's some really great inspiration, or it might be the pain of staying where you're at. So whatever it is that you're using, it doesn't really matter. We want to encourage you to really leverage that stuff. And the other thing that we really want to encourage you is really track this stuff. We're going to talk about writing things down. We're going to talk about some ways to measure things. But way back in 1953, there was a study done of Yale's graduating seniors, and they wanted to determine how many of them had specific written goals for their future. Interestingly, only 3% of them did. So 20 years later, the researchers came back around and they polled the surviving members of the class, Yale class of 1953, and they found that the 3% that had the written goals had accumulated more financial wealth than the other 97% of the class combined. So if that doesn't inspire you to write things down, I don't know what does. I keep a little list. I don't know if you do, Jack, but I kind of have my little bucket list, and I do some journaling and things like that too. But there's always that list that I'm like that's something I really want to accomplish in my life, and I'm always kind of adding to it. I keep it on my computer, and I'm always adding to it. And sometimes I look at it and I find there's things that it's just not that important to me anymore, and I'll take it off. I don't necessarily want 500 things on the bucket list. I want 6 or 7 really juicy ones, right? So again, write them down and start thinking about in terms of vision, right? Because today is going to be all about brainstorming and that sort of stuff. But Jack, I know you have an interesting way to look at this, because we talked about this the other day, that whole concept of the wheel of life, right? And I didn't really quite get it until you gave me the visuals. But if you could cover that and explain that for the listeners, I think it'd be great, because it's twofold. It covers obviously all the different arenas in your life that you want to set goals for, but also talks a little bit about the relationship between them.
Yeah, Shecky. So, oftentimes when we talk about wealth, in America, all of us primarily, our mind immediately goes to money. And so what's interesting about this, what we call the wheel of whole life success, is that it puts an equal kind of a level of importance on all 5 major, key areas of your life. So I'm going to kind of just list them out for you guys as a listener. And then there's an exercise that you guys can do at home. When I did this, man, it was transformational, eye-opening, all of the above. So there's 5 areas of your life, and pretty much, all your goals and your vision for your life are going to fall under one of these 5 things. I think as I say them, and then you start thinking about, career goals and things that you want to do and be and have in your life, like all of them fall under these 5. So number 1, and they're in really no particular order. I mean, certainly we could argue that some of them are more important than others, but in all reality, if any of these 5 are lacking, or if you've really not paid attention to one of them, then they act as almost like a drain on the others. And I'll explain that in a second. But so let's just go through them. Number 1, physical, or your health, your physical health, physical well-being. Number 2 is relationships. Number 3 is your spiritual life. Number 4 is your financial. And then there's your intellectual. So again, it's physical, relationships, spiritual, financial, or intellectual. So we have this exercise, the wheel of whole life success. So basically what you're going to do is just draw a circle, put a dot in the middle, and then you'll put 5 spokes to, like almost like a wheel, right, of a bicycle. So you have 5 spokes going out to the outside. And then at each point on the outer circle where the line intersects, you're going to write the 5 key components of wealth. So you write, the physical, and then you write so on and so forth all around. Then you're going to put like anywhere from a 1 to a 10. So the 1 would be like really close to the center dot. And then a 10 would be on the very outside, where and you'll just kind of rank yourself. And then once you've got yourself ranked of where you're at right now, not where you want to be. Of course, we'd all love to be level 10 in all 5 areas, right? I don't even think that's humanly possible to do that. But if you are able to put a level 10 on all those, please call into our show, and we'd love to interview you on how you are so amazing. But
yeah, I want to be friends with you if that's the case.
Yeah, please spend some time with me, rub off on me, because I'm definitely not there. So you want to draw then another circle from each dot to dot. And if your wheel, the circle that you draw, if it can't roll, you've probably got some challenges. You've got some major imbalances in your life that really need to be addressed. I know for me, a few years ago, my spiritual life was really, I could have ranked it probably a 2 or a 3, and was ranking pretty well on all the others, but yet that one thing, that one key area, we could definitely argue that's the most important, right? That was dragging all the others down and preventing me from really becoming all that, that I could be in life. And it was even affecting definitely quality of relationships with other people. So I really went to work on that one, and I brought that one up and really focused, started, really giving back, started giving 10% back to charity and to the church, and really focused in on that relationship and connection, with my Creator. And that brought everything else up. So I'd like to challenge you guys to do this little exercise and kind of see, do a real honest self-assessment. And then, look at what short-term goals can you set right now in some of these areas that can help move you towards your long-term goals. So to give you an example of, like a long-term goal for me, that I've accomplished, was to be able to have a residual income coming in that was enough or more than enough to do all the things I wanted to do, that would then pay for all of our monthly expenses each and every month, so that I'd never have to really work again unless I really chose to or was inspired or motivated to. So in other words, financial freedom was when all your monthly expenses are paid for by your passive monthly income. And for being able to do that, for example, this week we rented out a lake house with our family. It's on a little lake about 30 minutes from here. And I've been able to go out jet skiing, pontoon boat. We're doing fishing. I fished all morning with my boys and my 2 sons and caught 12 fish. It was great. We've got them, we're going to cook them up for dinner tomorrow night. It's just that freedom to do whatever I want to do, when I want to do it. And that was my big vision. And that's where, looking at this, when I did this exercise 15 years ago, that was my kind of like my overriding vision for, my wheel of whole life success is not only having great financial, resources, but actually being able to enjoy that with the relationships that I have with my family and with my friends. We're having friends out to the lake house, all that. It's very important to have true balance in all these areas of life. So, Shecky, what else can we, can you share about that as far as examples of your vision and, some of your goals?
Well, I there's a lot of things I could say. I want to just back up a little bit and go back to the wheel of whole life. I mean, when you do that honest assessment, I've done it a couple times, and I can honestly say that I am getting fairly close to a round wheel. One of my big goals is to have an exact situation to you, Jack, in that all of my bills are covered with passive income. And to be completely transparent and honest, that is not completely the case for me yet, but I'm very much moving in that direction. And I think most people that know me well is, as our business goes out and grows and succeeds, I continue to buy more properties and create more streams of income with that income. So, but that would be an area that's certainly maybe not as far out in the spokes as I would like it to be. But I agree with you. I think there's so much, the thing that, especially in America, we're in this society that everything is like instant gratification and now, and I got to have more and all that. And there's no question that things are changing. People are becoming more spiritual and more understanding that that's not the only thing. But yet we're still very subject to all these marketing messages and advertisements and negative news and all this other kind of stuff. And it's hard to really ignore it. And so I think that to get to really understand, like, I've worked hard on my health, and I've had some health challenges, and I really got it dialed in. And I'm really careful about my diet, and I'm really careful about exercise, and I'm in the yoga studio regularly, and that really makes a difference in other areas of my life. It's, it makes a difference everywhere. I mean,
just to kind of throw in just a, little side comment there, that's paid off for you, in a big way. I mean, my wife thought you were like 20 years younger than what you really are, and like legitimately, not like the humor you, like, I'm going to tell you you're 10 years younger than what you are just to make you feel better. She was shocked when she really found out your true age, biological age, right? So that is certainly a level you could put yourself right on, close to that level 10, I think. But, and like you said, you're working on that financial side of things where you're growing your own passive income and doing a great job on that. So yeah, we can all get better in all these areas all the time, right? I mean, none of us, I think if you're really truly living true human experience, we're always going to be striving for those level 10s. I don't think we're ever really going to reach it, but it's the striving to keep getting better in all areas of life, and understanding that, all these areas of life are vitally important to your overall, happiness and really having true whole life success, not just having one area where you have a ton of money, but, you have terrible relationships with your family, and you're, really don't have any true friends. And, man, that sounds like kind of like a miserable type place to be, Shecky. Like, I want to build wealth, but I want to enjoy it with people that, like, I love, they love me. We care about each other. We want to enjoy it together.
Yeah, there was it's a famous meme and saying that's gone around the internet probably for the last 10 years of the old man on his deathbed saying, "Wow, I should have spent more time at the office." Said nobody ever.
Said nobody ever.
Right? Yeah, said nobody ever. Right. So, again, balance is important, but now that we've kind of hammered that point home, let's get dialed back in and talk about this importance of writing stuff down.
Sure.
Because I think that, obviously in a podcast format, everything is audio. And, if this is one of those ones that you got to pause and really take note, that's a good thing. So you can either write your goals down in a notebook or whatever, or you can use Evernote or just Google Docs or whatever. There is some science that does say that there is something very magical about handwriting things versus typing things, because it uses a slightly different part of your brain, and it will help solidify things a little bit better. So if you have the option, I want to encourage you to write things down. And you should do it after you do the wheel exercise, because that's going to give you some better insights into maybe the kinds of goals that you should be setting. And, to be maybe a little bit general, I mean, let's talk, there's two really kinds of goals. One is the short-term goals and one is the long-term goals. So when I did that wheel exercise, I guess you call it the wheel of life, Jack, or wheel of whole life.
Wheel of whole life success, right?
Yeah. It forced me to say, okay, well, if I'm lacking in this area, what are the things I can do, even if I'm not a 10? Let's say I've got values, say 6, 5, 4, 3, 5, right? I'm fairly round, but I've got like a 4 and a 3 in there that's not going to roll real well with the 5s and 6s. So if I look at those 3s and 4s, what can I do short term to not necessarily turn those into a 10, but to turn them into a 5 or 6, so at least catches up with the other areas of my life, so I can at least get the wheel to be round and keep things rolling. Once I do that, then I can say, okay, let's look, what are my long-term goals for each of these 5 big categories? But in the interim, I want to get the wheel round. And that's why I think it's such a powerful exercise, because it can really help you set some really perfect short-term goals, right? So making a quick list of everything you want, right? Set it into specific goals. We talked about writing it down. One of the things that I found just magical for myself is after writing them down, like I use one of those little, those pretty books that you can buy that are journals that are, it's not just like a notebook, but you spend an extra $7 or $8 and you get a really nice journal to handwrite stuff down in. But I will do my big goals at the beginning of the year and I'll write stuff down. But every couple, 3 weeks, once a month or so, I'm going back in to look at that. And oftentimes I'll even put 1 or 2 of them up on my whiteboard in the office. And it's like, I'm not really focused on this anymore. What happened? I got to get back in. Is this still important to me? So just being able to review is really, really important. And then I think once you do, it's important to determine that sort of short-term versus long-term. So like, what do I want to accomplish this year? What do I want to accomplish in the next few weeks? How can I get something done in this next week that at least moves me closer to it? Maybe that's a super duper short-term goal, but you can always break it down and eventually get to a point where like, gosh, what's the next step? Right? Like there's always, people get sometimes so freaked out about this process. It's like, well, how am I going to be able to be financially independent, marry the woman of my dreams, have 2.7 perfect kids, live in the mansion, sit on the church board, okay, those are all great, wonderful things, but it's not necessarily something you're going to do every day, right? It's like, you want to meet the woman of your dreams, you want to marry the woman of your dreams, it starts with just being a better you, right? It starts with just, some good habits every day that is going to make you a better person, that's going to attract the kind of person you want into your life.
Yeah. So your vibe attracts your tribe, and
I love that. Yeah.
Your vibe is going to who you are, and how you're showing up is going to attract the, either the great partner or the very poor partner. So, Shecky, I just think, and just in hearing what you have to say is awesome. I don't think as human beings that we have the bandwidth to take on all 5 of these areas at the same time. I just don't see how that's even remotely like realistic or possible. So I don't think you're never going to be like, a 7 equally in all 5 areas. Or an 8 in all, or a 9 even. I just don't see that. I mean, you put extra attention on, really on your finances. I mean, you're not going to be able to bring them all up at the same time and improve all areas at the same time. You only have so much bandwidth. You only have so much points of energy that you can harness and then focus. And so I just think we got to be patient with ourselves. Like what you're saying, Checky, is like, you're not going to get them all like at once. Like, to have some short term that you can take immediate action on, and have some long term, keep reviewing and seeing, is this still a priority? Is this still important to me? Maybe as you grow and you just start to realize, your priorities change, and it's maybe not all that important. I know for me, what's most important right now is just like enjoying my family. Like I work so hard the last 20 years to get to this point where we have, like I have a family that I can really enjoy. So I've really cut back on the amount of work or hours of work that I'm putting into my businesses. And although that's a little bit painful for me, I am definitely very much a workaholic. I'm very competitive when it comes to, business and wanting success. It's still, I've got to know that like my vision all along was to be able to be a present father and enjoy this stage. So, that's the thing. Like my goals now that I probably wrote down 10, 15 years ago, or I would say they're probably not even on my radar anymore. Like the next level of, success is just not that burning inside of me to achieve it like it would have been, not too long ago. So just be patient with this process, and But definitely, I do agree with you. Checking out, it's what I do. Old school, grab a pen and notebook paper and write my goals down. That's pretty much it. That's all I do. Keep a list, and I have it in a notebook, and periodically review it and add to them as I go.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too to learn. And for any of the listeners that are putting out there, I want to just, and this is really not anything that we had pre-scripted. It's just something that it's just hitting me right now as we're recording this, is from our listeners, I'm really curious. I don't know if you are, but I'm really curious as what people are going to do to set their goals. So if you are listening to this podcast right now and you're open to it, feel free to send us an email. You can either send it to jack@highreturnrealestate.com or Shecky, Shecky, @highreturnrealestate.com, and let us know what kind of goals you're setting. Let us know how the whole wheel of life, or wheel of whole life success, turned out. I'm really curious to know what kind of goals you're setting and what are the things that are important to you, because I think there are common threads among all of us, but it's interesting to see the different nuances of things that are important to different. I mean, we're all connected, but we're all different. And I welcome you, if you're open to sharing. We'd love to see that stuff, because I think it helps us when we go and talk to other human beings that are out there investing, and we're doing everything that we can to try and help people achieve their goals. It's always interesting to see what goals are out there, right? And when it comes to that, really it's going to be important for you to really decipher what matters to you. It's what's the most important.
Yeah, Shecky, I wholeheartedly agree. And, I think that overall our overriding motivation is that we're just huge fans of human potential. If you really look at the other businesses that we've been involved with, and you were a very successful digital marketing consultant. I've had a successful nutrition business with incorporating network marketing into it, where, you're making a big difference in helping people to have become the best versions of themselves. And I think that's what we love to do. So yeah, we'd love to hear from our listeners on, what are some of the goals that you've set, and, what did the wheel of life look like for you? Is that, when you really went to do it, did the exercise, what did you really see that you weren't maybe seeing before? It gave you more of a bird's eye view on what your life is really like right now. And ultimately, maybe a little bit more information on how you can take it to that next level. So I just love, Shecky, I just love watching people win and watching people set goals and go after them with passion, with relentlessness. Man, that just, that's what drives me every day, is seeing other people win.
Yeah. And I love the term that you use, human potential. And I think that, because you and I have both been involved in personal development for a long time, it's just something that's become part of life. But the difficult part about all of this for everybody is that it is difficult. I find for myself, this has been a lot of my struggle, is that it's always easy to set the goals. For me, it's a lot of people say, oh, it's so hard to figure out what I want. For me, that's never really been that difficult. I mean, I want this kind of life. I want that. I want to achieve a certain amount of health. I want these kind of relationships, friends, these sort of material things, whatever. The hardest part about that is maintaining the focus and the discipline to do that. So again, not a brag, but I thank you for what you said about, me fooling your wife by 20 years. And, I don't necessarily, expect you to butter me up, because we know each other too well. So,
oh man, if anything, I want to give you a hard time any chance I can get, man.
I know, but thankfully it's not about that, right?
Right.
I want listeners to understand that even though I'm well into my baby boomer years, there were many, many, many years that I was very overweight. And I don't even know if you know this about me, Jack, but back in my high school, college days, I was a very heavy cigarette smoker. I mean, at my peak, I was smoking 2 packs a day.
I never would have known that or believed it.
Right, because you see what my lifestyle is like now,
Yeah.
right? And of course, this is many years later, and we're not going to say how many, but let's just say many. And all of these things happen, though. This was my biggest struggle, is trying to get to a point where I could dial this in, where I wasn't necessarily, the chubby guy, where I felt good about myself, where I wasn't always polluting my body, not just with cigarettes, but, sometimes weed and bad food and all this other stuff. Like it takes discipline to be able to move away from that. But the rewards are so freaking great. And I will tell you, this did not happen overnight. So if I could give people insights, the best thing, and I know I'm kind of starting to sound like Father Time, and it's not my intention here, but over time, you can use time to be your ally. So a lot of the changes that I made were very tiny. They were very incremental. Obviously, quitting smoking was a big one, but it started with cutting down. And eventually it got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to go cold turkey. And then it got, it's like, okay, I'm just not going to eat junk food. I'm not going to eat potato chips. Let's start there. So, you can eliminate one thing out of your diet right now if you want to, as an example, if better health is one of your goals. It's not, you can read all these great blogs about health, and, we were learning some things about some of the problems with our food supply and things like that. And we could go down a very deep rabbit hole with that stuff. But I could guarantee you that every single listener of this podcast right now could be listening to this and go, there's probably one small change I could make to my diet that would make me healthier. A tiny change. And I'm only using diet as an example to speak in terms of increments, right? So if you just do it incrementally, right? The old saying, inch by inch, everything is a cinch. And I know that's really corny, but I found that really works for me. And I know that's worked for a lot of other people too. So I want to encourage you to maybe do it in these small little bite-sized things. Give yourself a break. But when you can do that, and maybe, okay, you gave up potato chips for a week. That's something to celebrate. Like you made a dent, right? Oh, you didn't lose 50 pounds, but you're moving in the right direction. And I think that's really, really huge. And I want to kind of start setting some things up for part 2 of this podcast, which we're going to cover next time. But most of that is related to financial. And when you start getting into financial things, obviously we're going to start talking about budgets and things like that. And so it's the same thing. What can you do? And I want you to start thinking about this now before we get into part 2 of this, is if you were to put yourself on some sort of budget or some sort of way to control your finances or your spending a little bit more so that you could set aside cash to be able to buy performing assets, whether that's real estate or anything else, what do those little daily disciplines look like? For example, it's appalling to me, and it's fine if you got the money and you can blow it, but I walk down the streets in downtown Indianapolis and I see every Tom, Dick, and Harry holding a Starbucks cup. It's some sort of like mocha, frappa, wappa, double whip, extra hot, whatever, right? And automatically that equates to $5 to $7 for a freaking cup of coffee. Okay. Add that up over, 250 or 280 work days, even if you don't do that on the weekends, right? You're talking thousands of dollars that you're pissing away, that you're giving to, what's the guy's name Charles Schultz, is that the guy that started Starbucks? I don't remember the guy's name, but it's money that could be towards your financial future, not Mr. Starbucks.
Yeah. I think that's a great example. I mean, there's probably so many areas where we're all wasting money per se, that we could be banking and saving up cash. I mean, you talk about real estate investing, you guys, and we've hit this on previous podcasts, but you got to have cash. I mean, the no money down type philosophy is, I just don't agree. I don't like it. And when I look at like, okay, how can I save more money? I mean, one of the things that is really hard for Americans to do, because we all want to, have this desire to put on a show and keep up with the, proverbial Joneses, right? But I drove a car up until less than a year ago that had 135,000 miles on it. It was a 2008 used Mercedes-Benz. Now, it was a nice looking car. Nobody's going to like play a violin for me and be like, oh gosh, you sacrificed so much, right? But I mean, I had no car payment on that for years, and it was running fine. It wasn't my dream car, but I banked so much money every single month, and over time, investing that money and then compounding that saved money, it made a difference. So I would just say, look at some of those, things that you can do to where you can really follow the Dave Ramsey approach of playing a little bit of defense to where you're defensively saving money. Offense is where you're really working on increasing your income. How do I generate more income to the household? How do I increase more revenue? Whereas a defensive philosophy would be more where you're saving and trying to figure out ways to, cut unnecessary frivolous expenses. So look at both scenarios, but got to have goals in that. And really, here's the one thing one of my mentors told me that's really made a difference. He said, if you can figure out a way to save $100,000 in cash, that once you do that, going from 100,000 to 1 million is much, much easier and faster than going from 0 to 100. And I thought, wow, it's easier to go 900,000 up, from 100 to 1 million than it is to go 0 to, yes, because the most of the effort, like if you look at, for example, a rocket ship getting off the ground, most of the effort is just in getting it off the ground. Once it's in the ground, inertia, momentum, all that takes over. So that's what's going to happen for you guys. And I know a lot of our listeners are probably, have already done that. And probably a lot of you have not, saved up 100,000 as of yet. So I can tell you from personal experience, it was, yes, going from 0 to 100 was difficult. That was a grind. That was hard. But when I got there, I think what happened is that, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, said, you're responsible with your money. You're responsible setting your financial goals and being smart with your money. And you've taken care of the small amounts. Now I'm going to bless you with a lot more. And man, it was crazy. When I hit that 100, boom, it just was able to save so much faster and compound and grow that money. It was pretty amazing. So I would say, if I could give you a goal, maybe, I don't know if this is a short term or medium or long term for you. It could be anywhere depending on where you're at currently. Go for the 100,000 and cash savings. And you guys, it's going to be pretty amazing what happens, when you're able to do that and have the discipline to pull that off.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point, because the same thing is true for airplanes too, right? Like they use something like, 75 or 80% of their fuel on takeoff, and then they can cruise halfway around the world on the rest of the fuel that they have. So it's very similar. But I think you bring up something that I find very interesting, that there's a deeper layer to what you just said, and definitely more of a spiritual angle, in that now you're in a point where you're taking total responsibility for yourself. And this is really what's going to separate the men from the boys, the women from the girls, because there's a lot of people listening to this that I guarantee you, Jack, won't do anything. And they'll say, yeah, it sounds great, whatever, I know all about this. They're not going to take the action to write things down, to create things that are measurable, achievable, obviously realistic for them. And if you're American living in the United States, I don't even care if you're flipping burgers or whatever you're doing for a living, we are still, notwithstanding all the political turmoil that's going on, we're still in a country where there is enough opportunity that you can go out and figure out a way to save $100,000. There's no question in my mind that you can do it. Maybe you work an extra job. There's lots of ways to do that. So put this in terms of what's important to you, set up some realistic goals. But the most important point that I think that's in this entire thing that we talked about is, how are you being responsible to yourself, right? When you look at that wheel and it's out of round, right? The only reason that any of our wheels are out of round, and I'm just as guilty too, is because there has been areas in our life where we have not taken total responsibility for that portion of our life. All right? I mean, it's just the way it is. If you're not where you are financially, you haven't taken total responsibility for your finances. It's that simple. If you're not where you want to be intellectually, you haven't studied enough. So there are some disciplines, but I believe that the discipline comes from that commitment. And the only way that you're going to have a commitment is to say, I can't put any responsibility on anybody else, right? Like there's an old saying that when you point a finger at somebody, there are actually 3 pointing back at you. And, you said that 100K was a turning point for you. And I've had a number of turning points, Jack, but in my world, it's been all about going, I've had some really, really dark periods in my life. Bad finances, bad health, bad relationships, right? Like really rough. And some of it happening all at the same time. And it wasn't until I looked at the man in the mirror, to quote an old Michael Jackson song, that I said, you know what? This is freaking all about me. I can blame bad economies. I can blame crooked partners. I can blame, acts of God. There's, he did, she said, if this wouldn't have happened, this one, I got news for you. When you sit there and you look in the mirror and you go, I am totally responsible 100% for all of this, that's the starting point of true success.
There was always one person at the scene of the crime, right, Shecky?
There's always one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's talk about setting up next week. And let's give them a little preview. What is the financial independence quotient, your FIQ?
Well, I don't want to give it all away, Jack, but let's just, you've already defined the words of what FIQ mean. And essentially all it is just a formula, right, of how to create passive income in our world using real estate so that you can achieve everything you want. And I want to encourage all the listeners to go and do the exercises and the goal setting that we suggested in this episode before listening to the next episode. Because once you really have that etched in your mind and you say, this is what my wheel looks like, this is what I want to accomplish in my life, the whole FIQ formula will be not only easier to understand, but it will be easier to achieve and plug into, because you'll have the motivation, you'll have the reason why it makes sense. So I want to just encourage everybody to do that. And I don't really have anything else. I mean, I'm excited for next week, but I don't want to give it all away.
No, man. I'm way too excited about next week, because this is going to wrap, and tie everything together that we've talked about. But this is so important this is like the number one thing of, I think, why we're all investing in real estate, or those of us that want to invest in real estate, is that we want to be financially free. I mean, ultimately, I guess I can't speak for everybody listening, but I'm pretty close to 99% of you do. So next week, we're going to really talk about how to, figure out the numbers that you need to hit, how many properties that you need to own in order to reach your, FIQ.
Yeah. And I want to say, sorry to interrupt, Jack.
No,
I just wanted to say, you and I talked to a lot of investors, and unlike a lot of other industries, we use the phone a lot. So oftentimes you and I are on the telephone with investors, and it's always important to me to ask, okay, you're doing this. Why are you doing this? I'm always curious to get into the investor's head and say, why do you want to buy this property? Well, and then I get the answer, well, because I want to make money. I want to have passive income. Okay, great. That's great. But why? Why? Like, I'm trying to find out what the real motivation is. So if you somehow go through our website and somehow end up on a call with Jack or I, and we ask you why you're investing, you damn well better have an answer.
Right.
Okay? Right? You better have a freaking answer, right? Because otherwise, you're like a ship without a sail. Like, where's that thing going to go? All right. I mean, yeah, we can help you find properties. That's what we do. But it's more important to understand that motivation behind it. And it's not important for us. It's important for you. So I really want to encourage you to get clear on that, because it's going to really help you accelerate your progress.
Yeah, Schechter. So thank you for listening, everybody. We feel like this was a little bit out of the norm from our normal podcast, but we felt it was so important to, really, like we said, our main mission is human potential and watching people win. So we felt like we had to insert this one into the mix. And I'd like to encourage all the listeners, if you are looking and you're ready to invest into property, please visit our website, highreturnrealestate.com. We just recently gave it I think an amazing makeover. There's properties listed on there that you can take a look at. You can book a call with Schechter or myself, and we'll show you properties that aren't yet on the website that we just acquired, that you could start creating your passive income stream and hitting your financial independence quotient with. So with that, Schechter, I look forward to hearing from you, and hope everybody's looking forward to hearing from us next week.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Appreciate you, and appreciate your leadership, and appreciate everything that you do in the personal development arena too. I feel like it's a blessing for me to be associated with you on such a regular basis.
You too, my man. All right, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.